Hello and welcome to Geekverse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the Geekverse Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Hartcaster-Dolmus, and I have with me the Cube himself, Taylor Field, on this little Sunday morning cast on the Lord's Day. How are you doing today?
I am doing quite well. I appreciate you accommodating my schedule because it's a week. It's always a week, but I'm happy to be here.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm very excited for this episode because, truthfully, there was zero news in the world this week. There was no new game releases. I haven't really been playing anything particularly new. So instead, we're going to the past, baby. We're going back to 2001, and we're going to talk all about the GameCube, some of our favorite memories and stories and stuff like that. And then we're going to roll it into a discussion on Switch and Nintendo Switch Online, and are they going to do GameCube there? What's with all these GameCube ports? All that kind of thing. So it's going to be a fun discussion. Really not many plugs other than just the Arcane retrospective. Of course, the rankings, the final episode is up there on Patreon right now. Still don't know when I'm putting that on the feed. So if you want to get it, now's the time to jump over to Patreon. If not, in a week or two or maybe more, you will see it up there. And that's pretty much it. I kind of want to just get right into it today. Taylor, what have you been playing lately? Anything new or exciting or interesting?
It's kind of going into the past a little bit because recently I found they've reactivated the servers for all the old Call of Duty games. I'm like, okay. I'm really digging that. So I popped in my Black Ops 1, played some multiplayer. I thought this is cool. Like there's like hundreds of thousands of people playing this game right now. This is really cool.
Crazy.
And then I thought, okay, now as much as the multiplayer is great, what I'm really kind of just like feeling the water for is the zombies. So I went into playing, because Black Ops 1 has all those OG zombie maps from World at War. So I was playing that. The playlists they got a few hundred people in there, but it doesn't take long to get into a game.
Oh, you were playing online?
I was playing
zombies?
online,
Okay,
and
cool.
I was like, oh, I am back in high school again. I go on to Derice, which is one of those, like the fourth one from World at War. It's like the teleporters, and they had the Hellhounds. There's all like a bluish dark scheme to it, and it's like muscle memory. Everything's coming back to me, and I'm just tapping back into my old like routines that I used to do back in high school playing this map. Oh, I loved it. Me and this guy got up to almost 40. I think we got like 36
That's
or 37.
sick.
But
Oh my god.
I
could
so
never
good.
get that high in the original World at War. It was always more in the Black Ops maps where I was able to get much deeper in the like the 40-50 range, but that's insane. There were so many like less tools. I mean, I guess some of those later ones that they added did have a lot more going on, but nice job, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just been an absolute nostalgia trip. So I'm trying to see, because I don't know many people that really would ever go back to playing those games. But I mean, if you're ever down to do like a zombie session,
I mean, how did the controls of Black Ops hold up? Because I remember that one feeling quite different, and I always really enjoyed it. Mechanically, though, there was something about it that was never quite as snappy as the other games, but like content-wise, it was so good. That's why I played a ton of it. But yeah, how did it feel? Because obviously Call of Duty is such an iterative series. We've been playing so much Warzone, which like the animations, the game feel, like everything's so crisp and good. Does it feel weird going back to them, or is it just because you've played them all that they're familiar enough, it works still?
There's enough like mechanics and movement mechanics that they have in Black Ops where it didn't feel too different from what I'm doing in Warzone, which was nice. That being said, I played multiplayer on Black Ops, and then I played Warzone multiplayer later, and I thought, okay, the difference is night and day. It's definitely, you can feel the difference in Black Ops. It feels much inferior.
Yeah,
that's the right word used for that. But when I jumped into the zombies, it felt totally fine. The zombies move very differently than players do, so it really
if there's
works.
a bit of latency or weirdness there, it doesn't really matter as much. But I would definitely be down. I don't think I technically own World at War. Maybe I do. If not, I'm sure it's pretty cheap. But I mean, I definitely still have my Black Ops disc somewhere, and I'm sure I can just pop that into the.
It works. That's what I
Series
did.
X. Yeah,
pop
nice.
the disc in, and I re-downloaded all my map packs that I had, and it was we're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like Kino der Toten is awesome. Ascension is really fun, so I'd definitely be down to jump into one of those. And then I never picked up any of the other Black Ops games, so I wouldn't be able to go to those ones that with like the amusement park and all those other zombies maps. I still want that game, just the Call of Duty Zombies game, just all those maps rolled into one, maybe a little remaster action on some of the older ones, throw a couple new ones in there. They really should. I feel like that could work as just like a live service thing where they just add new maps every once in a while, or add new features or like timed events and crazy things like that. That would be such a good game. I really, really want that.
They made the in Black Ops 4, I believe. They just did the open world zombies experience. So you just have one big map with vehicles, and just the
Right.
zombies are coming from everywhere. And it's okay. It wasn't really my kind of thing. Like
Yeah, it's a bit different.
that, like Shinonuma, Nakton Toten, those OG
Yeah.
maps, like those hit hard. Oh.
Yeah, and I guess when or if that Activision deal goes through, all those games will then drop on Game Pass at some point. So that would be a good time too to jump back in and do those zombie maps that I never even played, because there's definitely a lot. I feel like I've really only played like 4 or 5 of the maps and just played them so much, and then there's still a ton that I need to go check out. So that's cool. I love that. Have you played any more Alien Dark Descent since we did that episode a few weeks ago?
No, it's
Really? I'm surprised you were so high on it.
I am still very high on it. The catch is, and I kind of regret that I got it for PC because
okay.
it's so difficult for me to be in here on baby duty and play a game. And it's where
I guess
I
mouse
thought,
and keyboard is probably not good with baby, whereas controller you can kind of more like, I don't know, surround. I don't know.
That's just it. Like baby usually like just I could always do like they got like those, not like a saddle, but like the
strap them on there.
Strap them on the like the chest kind of apparatus. So I could always do that. But it's so much easier just to sit down, and baby's just on like a pillow on my lap, and I got the controller over there to play on the TV.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, and I kind of regret having it on computer as opposed to console, because I put a lot of thought into that. But the controls for Dark Descent just made so much more sense on a PC sense. But I'm thinking I might just run like we did for the charity streams, HDMI from my computer to the TV. Make the TV the monitor, and then I just Bluetooth my Xbox controller to the PC into the living room, and then
I mean, you could just use controller on PC too, but then I don't know, that might not be the most comfy setup, but that could
that's
work.
not a bad idea, because I could fandango.
Do you have a wired Xbox controller that could go into your PC?
I do,
Or like
actually.
a wireless one with USB? Okay,
keep it ready to go at all times.
That's a nice controller. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I want to hear more about that game in the future. So at some point, when you've played more of it, let me know. Not too much for me. I'm taking it kind of easy here. I went to the used game store yesterday, which I always like to do. I picked up a couple classic games. One I picked up here is X-Men Legends 2, The Rise of Apocalypse. I wanted to get this for the 24-hour stream because I have the other one on GameCube as well. I'm very excited to play those this year. It's a very interesting game because like the original X-Men Legends game like starts out very slow. Like I think you just have 4 characters and you're unlocking more and more. But this one you start with so many characters, and like the starting roster is like Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, and then Magneto is your 4th one there because like the Brotherhood and the X-Men are like teaming up to fight Apocalypse. And then like immediately you get like Scarlet Witch, you get Sunfire from the X-Men animated show. Remember that weirdo? And like you can get Juggernaut right. Like you start with like 10 characters, and it's a pretty sick roster. So it starts in a really it would be a good one for the stream, just because if I haven't gone through and unlocked stuff yet, we can just jump in and still have like a ton of stuff to do. So that's been fun. And sorry, you had a question.
I was just gonna say the multiplayer, does it go up to 4 players?
Yeah. It's exactly the same as Ultimate Alliance. I mean, I think it's the same development team that made these games. And like even the UI and those things feel and play the exact same. So it's pretty much similar, I would say, to Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1. Both X-Men Legends games feel pretty much the same too in terms of the look and playstyle and all that. So it's cool and fun to go back to those. And obviously I'm on a big X-Men high right now as we're going through that animated series. And then I picked up another nostalgia kit. I picked up this game called Yu-Gi-Oh! Eternal Duelist Soul, which is like does not roll off the tongue in any sense. When I had to ask the guy that I wanted it from the store, I just felt stupid saying those words back to back. But this is just like, a 2001 Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, and it's just a very simple, basic Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. But for me, it's really fun to go back and just like only have pretty much the OG cards, and like most of the cards don't even have abilities on them. And it's just like such a simplified thing, and of course it is very nostalgic, but it's also just fun to go back and play a version of Yu-Gi-Oh! That isn't, you don't have to like have all these things in the back of your head of like all these different mechanics. It's just so simple. It's like, is my attack higher than their attack? And like it's a very simplified game in that way. So that was kind of a fun pickup as well. I saw on like a couple lists online that's like the best Game Boy Advance Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. So I was like, okay, this seems like here it's like $10 at the store. I'm gonna check it out. And so that's been fun, just unlocking some cards and
so
making.
you got it for
some
Game
decks.
Boy.
Game Boy Advance, baby. Yeah,
That's so cool.
I'm just so into Game Boy Advance. I just still love it so much. That era, GameCube, Game Boy Advance. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but like that's just my pocket. So I'm so happy playing anything on that. I love the pixel art too, with like those Yu-Gi-Oh cards on the Game Boy Advance screen. Like it looks so good. It's great. So that's been fun as well. And then the other thing that I've been jumping back into this weekend, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, is Hogwarts Legacy. So we did our review, our 4-man review. You know, Kirkland Travis joined us, and we talked about the game. And I liked the game. I did enjoy it. I was probably the lowest of the four of us, but I still was enjoying it. I think after the review, I probably played for another week or two, and then sort of put it on the shelf. And then a couple times I've come back to it just because I've had friends come over who are really into Harry Potter, and they just wanted to see the game, so I just like play it for a bit. But I don't know what it was this weekend. I really am into the pocket of games. It's like it's late at night. I'm not quite ready for bed yet. I just want to put something on that I don't even need to listen to. I can just like listen to a podcast and just like play this simple game where I can turn my mind off. And I don't know why. Hogwarts Legacy, I had never uninstalled it. You know, there was something about it that was like, I'm not done with this game yet, but I'm just not ready to go back to it. And so this weekend it has been fun going back to it. And I guess the timing was kind of weird when I jumped out, because as soon as I went back in, I did like this one quest, and in 10 minutes I had just unlocked like the last 2 spells in the game, and I got the achievement for like unlocking all the spells. So I'm like, man, I was so close to getting all the spells, and for some reason I just dipped. But like one of them is great because you just what is it? It's like the transfiguration one. I forget if it's called that or if it has a different name, but you just like turn enemies into boxes and stuff, which once again takes me back to Ultimate Alliance 1 with me playing Doctor Strange and turn anyone into boxes. Like it's that thing, but then it has that mechanic too where you can like then throw that box at other people and like explodes and does all this stuff. So, and then just the other one was like just a full-on explosion. Like I have a couple fire spells already, but to have just a full-on bomb that you're throwing at people is cool. So these last 2 spells are pretty hype, and it's just fun going back to this world and just cruising around, flying around on the broom, and doing some simple puzzles and whatnot. It's strangely like comforting now, and yeah, I'm glad I took a few months, and because I remember on that review still like Kirkland had mentioned that there was some moment in the game that was such a huge like mind-blowing moment. I don't think I ever got to that. I still don't know what that moment is, but I kind of want to just play through the rest of the main story, or at least see this moment that he's talking about. So yeah, that was a fun one to go back to. Have you played that at all recently, or did that kind of live on the shelf for a bit there?
It's still installed on my hard drive, and
Yeah.
Madison's always like, why don't you play Hogwarts Legacy? I'm like, turning Call of Duty on,
Yeah.
Warzone with the squad.
Yeah, that tends to happen.
Yeah, I do plan to go back to it and indulge more, because I don't know, maybe I just need to be in that Harry Potter mindset, because we're listening to the audiobooks right now. We've been doing the movies as we do the audiobook, and I'm getting into that groove.
Yeah,
Once
it's a
fall
good
rolls
time.
around, I'm like, oh, this is Harry Potter season right now. So
I do feel like though you got to get in there before Starfield, like because once that comes out, you're
Oh,
gonna be
yeah.
like, I don't care about this anymore. I don't want to play with you anymore. The Toy Story meme. So I feel like August, where you know pretty calm here, not too many huge game releases other than going back to Call of Duty. Like it's a good pocket of time. Because did you ever roll credits or like beat the main story in that game?
in Legacy, no, I did not.
Yeah. So I don't think it's super long. And I think even just based on where all of us were in the review, like none of us were too far away. Kirkland had beaten it, but the rest of us were getting kind of close anyway. So yeah, at least go through and see the rest of that story. I mean, I don't know if we need to talk about this right now, but I feel like that game's definitely going to get a sequel, just how well it sold. I'm really curious what kind of things they're going to add to it, other than like they'll probably do Quidditch, but like, I don't know. I don't. This might be one of those games for me that's like a Borderlands or a Crackdown, where like the original game is so good that I never cared or really needed any of the sequels, and I just go back to that first one whenever I need that hit. And I feel like I could have the same thing where Hogwarts Legacy, where I'm like, I don't feel like whatever small additions they add to these sequels might not grab me unless they go to a new location. But it's called Hogwarts Legacy, so I think they're always going to stick around Hogwarts. But I don't know. It's kind of a weird thought, but like it feels imminent at this point. Within a couple of 2 or 3 years, we'll probably see that sequel.
I thought I saw rumblings of people talking about the team working on a sequel, although I have nothing to.
I mean, it sold
back
10
that
million
up.
copies in like a week or something. So it's
Yeah.
definitely like they would be silly not to make a sequel of that, or some sort of spin-off, or some other, I guess, Harry Potter game you would think.
Well, the Quidditch one is coming out. So.
Yeah, but that's I don't know about that. I don't know if that one's gonna blow the roof off. Maybe, I don't know. I'd like to check it out if it's cheap or free, but otherwise might be one that stays on the storefront for me. Let's talk about the GameCube. So the GameCube came out in what, 2000, 2001, something around that pocket of time. What is your first memory? Do you remember the first time you encountered a GameCube, or you saw an ad, or the first time you played it? Take me back. Take me back to early days of Taylor's gaming career.
I was definitely a late bloomer with the gaming scene. My younger cousin always got the latest and greatest gaming stuff right out of the gate. So originally he had the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I'd go over because him and his mom lived with my grandparents, and so I would go over to stay with my grandparents and them and hang out throughout weeks in the summer, and we'd play on the NES. We'd be playing OG Mario, Duck Hunt, all these different types of games, like Jaws. There's so many happy memories. And then one day, we were going grocery shopping with my grandma, and we were at a store called Thrifty Foods. And Thrifty Foods is an island grocery store chain.
They have it here too in Vancouver.
They have it there too?
When I lived in Port Moody, it was like the main grocery store I go to. It was great there. They have a lot of local stuff. It's a good spot.
This is good that you know it. Okay. So this Thrifty Foods had a massive like children's hangout area, ball pit, indoor fun, fantastic zone. And then they had a row of TVs and GameCube consoles hooked up with TVs.
This Thrifties I've been to does not have that at all. This is not a child hangout zone at this Thrifties. This is food and food only. That's sick though. I love it. It
was so incredible. This is like 90s stuff is oh my goodness. So me and my cousin, we've only played the NES before and Game Boy Colors as well. I remember there's some of that. But we go in here, we're hanging out, and like, okay, let's play some GameCube. And we only got about 15 minutes of game time, and it was like they had Super Mario Sunshine booted up, ready to go. So we're just playing Super Mario Sunshine. We're like, this is so much fun.
So you had not played 64 then at that point in your life?
No, I missed that. Skip that.
Wow, that'd be a crazy spot to jump in for your first 3D Mario game. I love that.
Yeah, and I would have been, under 10. I must have been in and around like age 10. Yeah. So just to see this, it was like the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So my cousin shortly after that ended up getting a GameCube. He got the silver one. He got Luigi's Mansion with it, Sunshine, all like the great titles. And I was so jealous, but like I'd go over there when we'd stay up late playing Luigi's Mansion. It was just such a good time. So eventually, and I think it probably would have been like a year later or so, it was when GameCube, I think, was starting to wind down because Walmart had a big sale on it where you get Animal Crossing and you get the GameCube in a bundle for like $79. And then
holy fuck, that's a great deal.
It's a really good deal. I'll never forget it because it was in the flyer, and I was begging my mom, just begging like, oh, can we please get it? Can we please get it? And so I wasn't sure if she was going to go ahead and get it, but at the same time, I also was begging my sister, like, please help me get it. Please help me get it. And so my sister bought me the GameCube and Star Fox Assault.
Okay.
So when my mom got me the GameCube with Animal Crossing, and Animal Crossing had the storage card in it,
the
too,
big card,
was very handy. Yeah. So I thought, oh, this is great. So I already kind of, I was pulling a fast one, kind of, I guess. But I got home with that GameCube, and I saw my sister got me the silver GameCube with Star Fox. She left it on my bed, so I had two of them. And my mom found out. I was like, "No, we're taking the other one back." Like,
oh, you didn't say it immediately? That's so funny.
No, I was young and impulsive, so.
I mean, the GameCube, it sits so nicely on top of another GameCube, you know? So why not have two of them? Yeah,
it's true. So I ended up keeping the one that was my silver one my sister got me, and Star Fox Assault. So that was my first title that I got, and I played the living daylights out of Star Fox Assault. Love that game.
I gotta say, that does seem like a weird first GameCube, like first and only GameCube game until you get other stuff.
Yeah, like
it's a weird pocket, but I'm into it. I like it.
I eventually would go visit my aunt who lives out here, and I'd stay with my grandma and out here close to my aunt. She had a GameCube. She had all these cool GameCube games as well. So then I got to play like Mario Kart Double Dash and got to really expand my library a little bit of just what other titles are out there. But eventually it just, back when like EB Games, in my opinion, was super prime, and you go there and they had all the used GameCube games and Xbox games on the shelves. It was just so cool. You might find that gem. I remember I really wanted Smash Bros. Because me and my cousin would play the daylights out of Melee, and they had a copy there for like $45. And I had to. My dad at the time ran his own landscaping property management company. So he would find coins all over the ground, and he had the biggest jar of quarters and nickels I've ever seen in my life, and I was allowed to use it. So I took and bagged everything, and I counted everything, and I went into the guy, and I was like, I just put all these bags up there. I was like, I want to get this. He's like, you gotta roll these coins. I'm like, oh no. So I went to the bank, rolled up like $50 worth of coins,
Hell yeah.
went back, and we bought it, and yeah,
That was it.
good stuff. That was it. Yeah.
My GameCube story also starts with a cousin. So growing up, I was definitely a Nintendo kid, and I had the NES and then the N64. I can't remember if I had a Game Boy Advance like before or after GameCube because I didn't have either of them at release. So it's hard for me to time out when that would have happened, but it was definitely that similar era. But yeah, on N64, my favorite game was definitely Super Smash Bros. That was just the coolest thing. I didn't know who half these characters were, but I knew enough of them that it was really interesting. And yeah, I always like platformer games, so that made sense. And so I remember later on with my cousin going to one of his friends' houses, and they had Melee. They were playing Melee. I feel like when I arrived, at least in my my brain is making this maybe more cinematic than it was. But I remember walking into this house and Melee was on the screen, and this just like blew my mind because one is like the graphics quality of it. You can't count the polygons anymore like you can on the N64. And then just like seeing the characters, and what blew my mind was Bowser. Seeing Bowser there as a playable character was the craziest thing. So I remember just seeing that and be like, damn, I need this console right now. This is going to be the coolest game I've ever seen in my life. And then I think my cousin either like shortly after, because he was also the one who always had the consoles like before me. So I'd go over and that's where I'd see all these. That's where I first discovered Oblivion and Fallout 3, all these cool games. And so he got a GameCube at some point, and the games I remember him having were also Animal Crossing, and I thought that was a really cool, really interesting idea, and I just liked the whole vibe of it. I feel like he maybe had like Pikmin, and I can't really remember like other games that were super iconic that I first saw, but I remember Animal Crossing was the one that stuck with me, and then eventually down the road from a pawn shop, me and my dad went to a pawn shop and got a used GameCube, the black one that I have sitting behind me here, still on the ground there, still plugged in. I was just playing it yesterday, playing some X-Men Legends. And yeah, so the two games I had at launch were Super Smash Bros. Melee and Animal Crossing. Got those from the pawn shops. That's a great way to start. I'm no shade on your Star Fox Assault, but like that's a good pocket to start with.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, obviously Melee was like mind blowing to me as like this huge Smash Bros. Fan. It was really cool to have the sequel that was like so much greater than what that original game was. And then Animal Crossing was really fun because that was a game that my sister could get really into. She was very rarely into video games growing up, and so when there was one that we could play together, that was always exciting. And Animal Crossing, I just remember, we both had our house there, and we were both just racing to get the golden statue. Whoever gets pays off all their debts can get the huge golden statue, and there can only be one per island. And I remember she got it first, and I was always like a bit salty about that. And I would take like the shovel and I'd go hit the statue, try to break it down, which of course you can't do. But yeah, some great early memories there. And then that was my console for a long time because I didn't have an original Xbox, didn't have any PlayStation stuff. So it was really just GameCube as the home console for years until the Wii. And I was always playing PC stuff as well. But I mean, I think some of the early games that really stand out to me, like Simpsons Hit and Run, was of course a great one because I don't know, I hadn't really played too many open worldy games. Not that that's open world, but just the freedom that game provided. I wasn't even really a Simpsons guy, but I just really liked the design. I guess I really found it quite interesting and just fun and silly and arcadey. The Lego Star Wars games, of course, that was when those games took off. Is that where you played Lego Star Wars, or did you have it on a different console? Yeah,
that
on the
was
GameCube.
GameCube. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so getting both of those, and those, I spent so many hours just getting 100% completion on those games. That was great. I remember Rampage Total Destruction was a game I played a lot of. That was a really fun one to play with friends. And then what other big ones? I mean, definitely the Tony Hawk games, like Tony Hawk's Underground and American Wasteland. Those were some really big ones for me. Taylor's looking back at his shelf, wondering if he has a couple there.
I mean, ooh.
Yeah, what are the other iconic games for you?
I'm gonna grab it. I'm pull it up.
He's gonna grab it. While he's doing that, Path of Radiance for me as well, because I guess at this point the timing had worked out that I had played Fire Emblem Sacred Stones on the Game Boy Advance, which is one of my favorites, a good tactics game and all that. And then the glow up, I talked about this in my Fire Emblem rankings that I did earlier this year, but the glow up from Sacred Stones to Path of Radiance was insane. And so that was always a game that I was just playing constantly. I'm just so curious what Taylor's grabbed. He has a lot there. I can see at least 15 to 20 games on this shelf. So he's picking up a couple classics here. What do you got in your hands there?
First of all, Wind Waker.
Yes.
Absolute treasure. My cousin and I spent many hours late at night playing through that. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Good time. Pokemon Coliseum. I love this because at the time I could hook up my Nintendo Game Boy Advance SP. Oh, it's been so long since I said that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even your Game Boy Advance, you could connect to it, but you could get your Pokemon and transfer between Sapphire.
So, and that game's essentially like a Stadium sequel, right? It's the same gameplay as Stadium?
It's like an actual.
Or is it like Pokken?
No, it's neither. It's honestly
what is it?
It's pretty much like
I always thought it was a Stadium sequel.
It's like the new Pokemon games where it's just like an open world and you move around. Like, let me pull up a thing.
What the hell? An open world Pokemon game on the GameCube? What?
And then they got like really cool battle sequences and shadow Pokemon in it that you rescue. Here's a good screen I can share.
This is crazy. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Pokemon on the GameCube, because that's like, I never had any of these Pokemon games, and I don't think I ever encountered them from friends and stuff. So you're exploring around.
Yeah, and you just go to like different towns, and obviously you got battles. The battles were so much fun. Just getting like the revolving 3D scale like battles like this.
So what differentiates it then from just like a standard Pokemon game? Is it just like a standard Pokemon game that doesn't have the like two versions, or what?
Yeah, pretty much. You catch Pokemon in it. It's just like a regular Pokemon. It's like a regular Pokemon game you'd see now on like the Switch. It's
right.
Really not too bad, except obviously Switch games are much more in depth and larger. But I really, really loved this game when I played it, and I love being able to transfer Pokemon vice versa from Pokemon Sapphire over to the Pokemon Coliseum. And then my next one is this absolute gem. Oh my gosh.
I was looking through a list of every GameCube game, and I saw Bionicle, and I'm like, Taylor's definitely bringing this up today.
The game absolutely hits
Is it just like a third-person kind of action-adventure sort of game there?
Third person, yeah. You go.
Is there a building element to it where you're creating Bionicles and customizing them?
No, you definitely don't. You play as the Toa, and you just got like lava surfing missions. There's like the green guy, Liwa. Like you get energy, and you can use your mask powers, and like use his level where you have to like do a lot of flying stuff. It's man, me and my dad play a lot of this. My dad really like would get angry because certain levels were very difficult.
A little janky, yeah.
Yeah,
but
it's such
classic.
a nostalgic game.
Nice. Yeah, I remember FIFA Street 2, which we've played. I've brought it into the Gauntlet in the past, but that was a really great kind of arcadey sports game that I was into. Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. For some reason, I only had that one, but that was one I played a lot of. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Of course, we talked about that a lot recently on Geekverse in general, just because that remake's in the works. Do you remember Odama? Have you ever seen Odama before? You should look it up. The box art. This is one of the sickest box arts you'll ever see in your life. It's kind of like a feudal Japan setting.
I know this. I haven't played it, but I know exactly this.
Yeah, it's essentially like a pinball sort of game with that aesthetic, which already is a weird combo. But how it works is like you had a microphone that you... Like there was a little plastic piece you'd click on your GameCube controller, and then you attached a microphone to that, and you would yell into the microphone to... I think activate like the spinner, whatever those things are called in pinball, to knock the ball back up. Or I forgot. Or no, you could like issue commands. It was like almost like an RTS fusion. You could like issue commands with the voice thing, and then you could like use the controller to do the rest of the pinball stuff. A game I never understood it. Like I owned it. I could never figure out what to do or how to make it work properly. But it was definitely one that stood out as just such a weird, trippy game that I wonder who developed that. I'm curious to see what other games they made before or after that, because it was just such a fucking weird game.
So this is the same microphone from Mario Party 7, correct?
I don't know. I guess different? I mean, the Odama. I remember when I got it, it was like it came in a bigger box and it had the microphone in it. So I don't know if Mario Party also had one of those, but it
Is
was
this your
that same
clip?
microphone. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely the Mario Party
It looks like
7
a vape as
microphone.
like per 2023 standards
Yeah.
now, but it definitely wasn't.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So those are just some of the ones that come to my mind first in terms of the most iconic games. Any other just iconic or favorite games that we haven't mentioned yet?
Mario Party 7, again, another one
Okay.
me and my cousin played like ages and ages and ages worth of that. Absolutely incredible.
Was that
Mario
like
Strikers.
the? Did you have multiple Mario parties, and that was the one that stuck out, or was that just like arbitrarily? Like for me on the original on N64, I only had Mario Party 2, so it's like become my favorite. I never had the other ones. Is that the same situation, or did you play multiple ones and 7 was the one that you kept coming back to?
Same situation. Like I branched out since I've collected a few others. I think I got Mario Party 5 and I got obviously Switch
Which
ones,
is
but
GameCube is what?
GameCube as well, yeah.
Yeah, because it was like 4, 5, 6, 7 were all on the GameCube. Does that sound about right? Something like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
And then
They did
8 would have
8,
been
9
over
and
on the Wii
10.
at that point, or DS, or something weird like that.
8 and 9, yeah, on the Wii. I think maybe 10 was Wii U actually, now I think about it. But
So many.
7 is exactly as you put it. It was the only one we played, and it was the one that we fell in love with. The last one before they started doing every character on the same cart situation.
Yes, the
So
Dark
there's that.
Ages of Mario
Dark
Party.
Ages, yeah. But yeah, Strikers is another one.
Yes, right. Of course, Strikers.
Yeah, there's a few other gems in there for sure. I wanted to ask you. So you said you and your sister were in the same town for Animal Crossing. Now, me and my
Yeah.
cousin tried so many times, and we weren't sure ever. Like internet was very unreliable at this time for
Okay.
information for gaming, and we thought we figured it out where I could visit his town because I could. I think I borrowed his SD card and put it in my slot B, and then I could visit his town. But we weren't sure how I could actually like get a house because there were 4 houses in that town. You pick one,
Yeah.
so we were under the impression that someone else could get your SD card, buy a home in that town, and then just kind of like not play at the same time, but be in the same town, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean that's how it worked for me and my sister. We would obviously be on the same memory card, and we both had a house on there. And then when you logged in, you would just choose like which like player you were logging in with.
You could do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it worked back in the day. And so you would either be like, yeah, I'm just going to play as Dylan, or I'm going to play as a new character. You'd create another house, and you could have up to 4 of them. Were you using the Animal Crossing memory card? Because maybe that was an issue. Because I know it took like that memory card came with that game because that game needed so much space. And so if you tried to play it without that, you might run into some fuzziness. So maybe it was something like that. If you weren't using that especially big memory card that Animal Crossing had, that could be the issue you were running into. But
That's possible.
I don't
yeah.
remember. Yeah, I don't remember ever plugging in like another memory card into the slot B and trying to do anything like that. So I'm not sure how that sort of thing worked. I don't
It-
think you could visit or like interact in that way.
It
but-
let us visit because you plug
Oh,
it in,
weird.
then you hop on the train, and the train took me to like his town, and I could see his people.
So obviously he wouldn't be playing. It was like a single player thing. You would be
Yeah. Yeah, I could go to
Weird.
his store. I could go into his house. I could see all of that. Very, very cool.
But you were never able to
experience.
create a second character in one of those houses. That is very bizarre. I wonder why that is. I remember that was another game too that had the Game Boy Advanced thing that you could attach to, and you could go to like a mystery island, and so you'd go to the mystery island like on your Game Boy Advance element, and you could like bring some of those things back to your island. So that was always a cool thing. That was so much work and so many things to plug in and wait for that I didn't end up doing it often, but it was definitely I still have that memory in my head of going back and doing that. Random aside, you mentioned that you played a Jaws game on the NES. I'm just so curious. What was the Jaws game like on NES? Because it would have been two. Was it like a top down, or was it like a
Top-down.
2-dimensional? Okay, top down. You're kind of in the water, and the shark's chasing you around. I can kind of picture that.
Yeah, we were talking a long time ago about game ratings and like some of the lowest rated games, I think.
Is
Or- no,
Jaws one
what-
of those?
Well, this is like early days of Geekverse, like year 1, and maybe
Okay.
it was like underrated games that like we thought were bad, but like ended up having really exceptionally high ratings. I mentioned Jaws in this episode,
Okay.
and like we had Googled it, but yeah, I'll pull up a quick thing here so you can see it because it's quite
Yeah, that's a long
it's quite
time.
something. It's top down, and basically you're just floating around on your ship.
Mm-hmm.
You're hunting Jaws. You got underwater combat.
Okay.
Yeah, this every once in a while, like, oh, there's a shark there, but yeah, Jaws will like creep in. So
Oh,
yeah, you're
okay, and
moving
then you
around
have
like
this kind
this
of
on your
top down,
boat.
like Final Fantasy sort of looking map.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you move around until you hit something. When you hit something, you just gotta like survive and fight the creatures, and eventually, like, Jaws is moving around the map itself, and is
Oh, okay, on the
absolutely
overworld sort of
terrifying.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
just
this
want.
is a game I would have really enjoyed as a kid because I think it just exploring maps like that would have been really fun, and maybe the shark element would have actually been the thing I didn't like about
Oh
it. I would
yeah,
have just liked exploring, but this does look fun because I remember having like a alien game on the NES, which is more just a side 2D view. You were just had like in a space station trying to escape from him and stuff like that. So,
like an actual like xenomorph alien.
oh yeah, I think it was called Alien 2 was the game. Is like based on the movie, had the same art and all that stuff.
That sounds so
I still have
cool.
that game somewhere. Yeah, it was great. I don't know if it was great. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it was one that stood out in my mind. It was a scary game as a kid too, and I remember playing it as I've been older, and it was like a very hard game, but really interesting nonetheless. I mean, a lot of those licensed games kind of get pooped out pretty quick, and I think that was kind of one of those, but still stood out in my mind because I played it from a young age. The GameCube
This
as well.
game.
Obviously, it was in the prime, maybe not the prime, but in the era where just every single movie and TV show and stuff was getting a game that came along with it. The Game Boy
Mhm.
Advance, GameCube era, like that's when that stuff was at its height. I feel like so definitely a lot of licensed games as well that I'd rent from like the Chronicles of Narnia. I remember was a big one that I really enjoyed playing, even though I don't think I was huge on the movie, but I really liked the game. But yeah, so many licensed games on those consoles, obviously.
Yeah, King Kong was a big one for my cousin. He
Nice.
thoroughly enjoyed that one.
Yeah. How about we take our first break and we'll come back and we'll get into some more GameCube memories. Okay, we are back. So I wanted to talk like about the console itself because we memed on this a few years ago, which I feel like was this the Switch launch when Nintendo was like going through other consoles and saying here was some unique element about it, like in the N64, it's like the first 3D console, or the Wii had motion control, and we always memed on this because when they showed the GameCube, they're like it has a handle, and it's like, come on, that's the best thing you can come up with that the GameCube did unique. And from some perspective, I can understand where it's like the N64. Obviously, that was a huge jump from where games were prior. The Wii motion control, that was a big thing at the time. But I still feel like there was a lot of things about the GameCube that made the console really special. And maybe in hindsight, they don't sound that way. But I want to talk about some of these things. So we mentioned the memory cards, but that was actually a big deal because I feel like always saving games was always kind of weird in the NES, SNES era. And then on the N64, it would save. I don't know. Was it saved to your console or was it saved to the games, to the like actual cartridge? I feel like it was to the cartridge, right? And maybe there was some element that could save to the console
I
itself.
want to say the cartridge because you pop it in and
Yeah,
like you could get a used cartridge from somewhere else and it's got an old
and it would
profile,
have something
like
on it,
like a
right?
Game
Yeah.
Boy cartridge, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, in some way, I think that is a special experience when you rent a game and someone else's save file is on there. But at the same time, the upgrade to a memory card was a really great thing, and be able to share your file with someone because you had two slots and you could do that was really great. And I really liked the freedom that that gave me. And it was also just a fun thing. It was another thing that you got to plug in and look at, and it was cool. And Animal Crossing came with its own one that had, a little character on it, and like you could write a little note and stuff. So I always liked that inclusion. I thought that was a great upgrade. You got to talk about the controller, right? Because this is one of the most iconic game controllers ever made. It still is cool. It's still interesting. Of course, it doesn't have all the buttons that modern controllers have, and modern controllers have improved in some ways, no doubt. But it's telling to me that all these years later, Nintendo still sells GameCube controllers and adapters for their Switch. That's crazy, right? That is insane. Where like obviously the Xbox and PlayStation are maybe more iterative than a Nintendo console, and there's less changes there. But it is still kind of insane that there till this day you can still go buy an official GameCube controller from Nintendo. Pretty wild stuff.
It's absolutely crazy. I love the feel of the GameCube controller.
Mhm.
It is really unmatched. It feels like it can survive a nuclear blast, and it just
Yes.
is so contoured to your hands nicely. Yeah, if you're button mashing from Mario Party and all that, like it endures. So I do think though that being able to use it in today's age of technology and gaming is a huge plus for this. I've mentioned before, I downloaded Fortnite on my Switch and I configured it to my GameCube controller, and
That's
that did not
sick.
work out well, but it works.
Yeah,
And
you don't have a left bumper, and the D-pad kind of sucks. So there's definitely
mhm,
some, and I guess the C stick would be honestly a big part too, or you don't have a full on. I mean, you could actually put a control stick in there. I know
mhm.
Clinton did that for his GameCube controller. He would we were doing a lot of Smash Melee stuff. We would pop open those controllers, change things, and he put another control stick on the C stick slot, so you had
Oh,
like a bit more control there. So you could do that. That might be
that's
good for
genius.
Fortnite if you wanted to keep doing that challenge for some
Yeah,
reason.
it might be. It just makes it easy though for playing those older games. Or in the sense too, like I think it reminds Nintendo to make newer games with simpler controls. You don't always need fancy things. Like when you get the
It's
new
true.
Strikers, they can keep it simple enough where you can. Well, they want you to use the Pro controller, but you can still get away with using the GameCube controller for it. Same with Mario Party. There is no drawbacks in necessarily my opinion. There might be the odd thing that's inhibited, but you can configure it
Yeah.
so it works like 98%.
Or at least like if player one is using a Joy-Con or a Pro controller, because I guess one of the things that's missing is like it doesn't have a start and select button. It just has start. Or in the Switch, obviously they have the plus minus, and then yeah, left bumper is usually not a crucial button, but for some games you will notice it. But for something like Mario Kart, you're good to go. Or obviously
Hmm.
Smash works totally fine with GameCube controllers. That's one of the big reasons why they brought it over to the Switch. Do you have a favorite controller or an iconic color or one that stands out in your mind?
I got my orange one. My aunt gave it to me a
Yes.
long time ago, brand new in package, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this orange one, this is mine. No one else uses this one."
Me too though. I had the orange one. I don't think mine was new in box, and I think mine is officially busted now. Some of the buttons on it aren't
uh,
working so well, but I still have it somewhere. And I such a weird kind of color palette, and I don't know. I guess the Switch maybe has some similar colors now on their Joy Cons, but I really like that orange one as well. And I had a silver one growing up, and now I have some newer ones that have like certain Smash logos, and I've put stickers on them and whatnot. But yeah, definitely the orange one and a silver one I had originally, and those are the ones that stood out. But I mean, that was also to me a big improvement where I feel like the GameCube was the first Nintendo console I had, so the first of three that it just wasn't janky. You didn't have the cartridges, so you didn't have to blow into them to get them to work. My Nintendo 64s have to like just maneuver things in weird ways to get things to work properly. And then also the controllers, right? If you unplug or plug in a controller when the console's on, it won't register it, so you have to like turn off the game, turn it back on. Whereas the GameCube, obviously, you plug things in all you want. And yeah, it just for the first time, obviously the discs were a lot better. I love those mini discs still. They're still great. But yeah, it was truly the first console to me that felt not janky, even at a young age. And I think I mean, I didn't know any better at the time. The N64, I'm like, this is as good as it gets. But yeah, the GameCube definitely felt like a big improvement just from the feel of actually using it on the day to day.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's such a refined, and I can't say modern anymore, but I think at the time, such a futuristically
Yeah, definitely.
created piece of hardware and equipment. And the attachments that they created for this console too were next level because you could get, um, I'm pretty sure you could get like a TV screen for the GameCube. I thought, or something
Oh
like
my
maybe
god, I don't
no,
remember
not a
that.
TV screen. Sorry, it was a portable. I think it was a portable battery pack that like clips into the bottom of the console or something. I need to confirm this. Sorry,
Yeah, I
maybe I'm
know.
just
I mean, I
making
know
things up.
The Game Boy connection thing was like an additional little rectangular thing that you'd pop on the bottom of the console. You clicked on. Mine has been on my GameCube so long that it literally will not come off.
Okay.
It is like glued onto that thing at this point, which is fine. I don't need to remove it. But yeah, I don't remember that attachment that you're talking about
A
there.
rechargeable battery pack for the
Oh, and it would go
console.
underneath. That looks pretty
Yeah.
much identical to the Game Boy Advance connection that I have on mine.
Play up to 1.5 hours playtime. Charge time 4 hours.
That is not good. That is not good numbers at
No,
all.
you got to
I feel
really
like
make it good.
I remember other friends at the time having like rechargeable controllers though. They're a bit chunkier and heavier,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it was like I forget how it worked. I don't think it was that attachment, but I feel like there was other versions of that. Of course, there's the iconic keyboard controller that exists out there. Um, what other weird stuff was there for the GameCube? I'm trying. There was another weird controller thing that I can't think of right now, but there was definitely some weird attachments at the time. Oh, I guess there was the Donkey Kong, like those
The
rhythm games, the Donkey
drums.
Konga, the drums, and all that, which you can technically play Smash with if you want. Like you can play another game with it. You just only have very limited buttons that you have access to. You can like jump and use your shield. That's about it.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
don't.
then lastly, like the thing that really stood out to me as well is that just because obviously there's the hardware improvement, the games looked a lot better, the sound, everything sounded better, all that stuff. But because of the just higher tech, they were able to do these pre-rendered cutscenes that were absolutely gorgeous, right? Like think about that opening cutscene of Melee, which is so iconic. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, some of those cutscenes, I still go back to them, watch on YouTube sometimes. Like these are just beautiful fucking cutscenes. They look better than like Switch games, and obviously some Switch games can have cutscenes that look just as good. But it was a pretty cool thing, and I feel like they really took advantage of that. Even playing Pikmin recently, they'll use that. And it seemed like a lot of those first party Nintendo games would either be an opening cutscene or like an early cutscene in the game that was just insanely good looking and it would always just kind of wow you right off the bat. And then of course you'd get used to what the game actually looks like when you're playing it. But it was something that stood out, and I feel like even though it was like Ultimate Alliance and stuff would always have those crazy cutscenes early on in GameCube, had the ability to do some of those. It was definitely, yeah, I feel like that was the intention. It was like, let's wow the players very early on, get them invested in that game, give you a higher level of detail, and then you'll be so invested that even if the game doesn't look as good as that cutscene, you'll still want to play it and get into it, right?
You make a very, very good point. Some of those scenes that you get in games are just absolutely incredible. Notably, yeah, um, Super Mario Strikers. There was just some really, really good
Right.
stuff in there. Yeah, not Strikers. Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Like you said, fantastic. Particularly, probably just the Mario games for the most part. Like had some
Uh-huh.
really, really good like cinematic sequences in there. I
Like
guess a lot of
Sunshine has I don't know if it's like one of those pre-rendered cutscenes, but I remember that game had like a really long intro.
the
And
plane coming into Delfino
yeah, it's
Island.
like
Yeah.
they've never gone this hard on like a Mario story before. They were really trying there. It was interesting.
I can't remember what I guess 64 Mario didn't really have any kind of big intro like that, did it?
No, it's pretty much just like the camera was panning around, which I guess at the time that was crazy because it was like this is the first 3D game a lot of people ever played in that kind of 3D, and so to have a camera moving around like that was trippy. And it was just like, yeah, Peach is like reading a note, and then the camera's behind Mario, and you're in the game, and that was. I guess before that you had like the face you could play around with, you could tug on his face and nose and whatnot. But yeah, it didn't have anything. It was more just like here's a 3D camera, have fun. Whereas yeah, Sunshine was like let's go hard on the story and set up this backstory of this island and this mystery of who Shadow Mario is. That whole song and dance.
I feel like that paves the way for so much of what we have nowadays in terms of opening sequences for games and stuff. Again, Nintendo is just the blueprint, in my opinion, for so many of these fantastic narratives we get to appreciate today with what
Yeah,
they did.
definitely. I kind of want to talk about the Switch element of this. So the second part of this conversation, which is recently, I forget what the topic was, but me and Travis were talking about like is GameCube going to come to the Nintendo Switch Online? Is that going to be the next step for this service? He seemed to think that it was, and my initial response was like, "Oh, no way! I don't think they're going to do GameCube on NSO. That feels like too big, or they could make too much money selling those games." But then when I was going through a greater list of the console, I kind of turned a bit on that, and I feel like there really could be a roster of games that does get brought to Nintendo Switch Online and offered in that as part of that service. But then there's other games that they could sell separately. So I guess just a first looking at the GameCube games that currently exist on the Switch. Of course, Mario Sunshine was part of the Mario 3D All-Stars collection. So me and you both have that. We did a review for that. But that's no longer for sale. Just before the Switch Online element of it, like, do you think Sunshine will become available again on the Switch, or were they truly just 6 months and that's it? And if you missed that, you missed it. Sucks to be you. You're not playing this game ever again.
That was for Mario's anniversary, right?
It was, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like Nintendo could probably not bring it back. That being said, like they're doing a Luigi's Mansion Oh no, that's the 3DS version.
It's
Sorry,
Dark
not
Moon,
the
yeah.
original. Right. Okay, I retract that.
We'll talk about
Um,
that one later, though. Yeah.
yeah, I think that there's not really a chance that they're going to bring that on
Okay.
to the Switch Online. I mean, yeah, I mean, if we're not getting any updates like a Super Mario Galaxy 2 thrown in there, then I can't
I
see
mean, at
them
this
focusing
point,
on
they
it.
definitely wouldn't update that, and it's still a weird decision that they didn't put that as part of that bundle. Very very weird decision. There was, of course, recently Pikmin 1 and 2 GameCube games that they ported over to the Switch. I think the only addition or change they made to those games was adding motion control functionality, which is something that I guess Pikmin 3 and 4, which are on the Switch, already had. So I'm guessing that was somehow easy for them to implement, or maybe even like there was Wii versions of those games that already had motion controls, and so they could port it over easily. But like the game, you wouldn't even call it a remaster. It's Pikmin 1 and 2 ported to the Switch, and then this one little feature added. Metroid Prime Remaster, of course, came out earlier this year. This is the first time that they did like a full-on remaster, or even some would call that a remake of Metroid Prime before they ported it over to the Switch. And then the last one is kind of a weird one, but this game called Batten Kaitos 1 and 2 Remaster is coming to... Did you play those games?
I have. Oh, which one
Oh
did
wow! I was
play?
not expecting that. That's a fun little twist of events. But yeah, they're doing a remaster. They're calling it remaster of 1 and 2. I know 1 was on the GameCube. I'm assuming 2 was as well, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, that is coming out this year, Taylor. That was in a Nintendo Direct a few months ago.
This is the only one that I played on GameCube. My aunt gave it to me, and I loved the living daylights out of it. I don't know if this one is 1 or 2, Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean,
I
but
think the first one is called Origins. Yeah, it's under you on the Wikipedia there. So I'm
okay.
guessing it's both of those two games then, bundled, remastered, and yeah, they're coming out later this year. Are you gonna pick
Oh.
that up? Or is that how much nostalgia you have
I
for
could
it?
honestly see myself getting it because this game creeps into the back of my mind every so often, and it's just
I
I've had
love
so
that.
many good memories because yeah, it was a card based game fighting
Yes.
these bosses.
It
and
looks
drawing
really
cards.
cool.
Oh, it was such a good time. I got so far into that game, and I think eventually I moved on to other things and got rid of it, and that's one of my regrets is getting rid of it. So I had no idea it's coming to Switch.
Now's your time. I think I'm gonna pick it up too. So that low key, it looks like we might be doing a review for that on the Sidequest here. So stay tuned. I don't think it has a release date other than this year. So who knows when that will be. I'm sure Nintendo will do a direct in September or something like that where we'll get that sort of information. So go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, you say it's a port or a remake, just so I can.
They're calling it a
confirm.
remaster. So not a remake, but I would say get some HD graphics going on there, maybe some quality of life features. You should check out a trailer and see what you can see about it. But yeah, it looks
That's
interesting.
amazing.
So yeah, to my count, those would be we'll say 4, or I guess 5, or even 6 games if you count 2 Pikmin games, 2 Batten Kaitos games, Metroid Prime, Mario Sunshine. Those would be the 6 big GameCube releases. Now, of course, there's other things like a bunch of Resident Evil games were on GameCube, and those are also maybe now available on the Switch. But I'm talking more of like Nintendo or GameCube exclusive games. That's kind of the conversation we're having here. So let's go through a list of a bunch of GameCube games, and let's just talk about like, should this get a remake? Should this get a remaster? Should this just be re-released as a port? And then we'll talk about the Nintendo Switch Online element of it later on. But starting off with this, so Metroid Prime Remaster came out earlier this year, which was, of course, only the first game. What do you think they're going to do with Metroid Prime 2 and 3 that were also on the GameCube?
Oh my goodness.
We know Prime 4 is somewhere supposed to come out at some point, but we've not got an update on the game in a long time. You would imagine they want to do 2 and 3, if they're going to do it, before Metroid Prime 4 comes out. But also, it wasn't a port, right? So there was potentially a lot of work that had to be done to actually remaster this game. And I feel like it'd be hard for them to do a remaster for 1 and then only port 2 and 3. So you would think they'd want to do the remaster treatment, but like, do they want to spend the resources to do that? So that one actually gets a bit dicey when you think about it more.
I really think it's a pick and choose scenario, and I know it's not Nintendo, but I'm going to default to Microsoft. They remastered Halo 1, they remastered Halo 2, they ported Halo 3, and there's nothing coming from that. And maybe that's the case here, like you said, remaster 1, and maybe they just do the port.
Right.
But my insight on Metroid is limited. I only get informed with what Ruben tells me for that because
Okay.
he's a diehard Metroid fan.
Yeah. Luigi's Mansion. So we talked about how Dark Moon is coming to the Switch, which seems like mostly a port, but maybe a little bit of remasterness to it. I mean, obviously they'll have to get some sort of remaster or some sort of remake remasterness because it was a 3DS game, so it had two screens. So they'll have to change that to one screen. But that's coming. I found it weird that Luigi's Mansion was not part of that announcement. So what do you think? Do you think, because obviously Luigi's Mansion 3 sold really big on the Switch, and there's only 3 games that series has had. What do you think they'll do for the GameCube one, if anything?
I feel like it'll just be a port, and that saddens me because I really would love a remaster of that game. That game actually, and I think I've mentioned this before, is the release title with the Nintendo GameCube,
right?
Instead of like a Mario main title, which is very interesting to me. But
and then I think Melee came out within a few months.
Yeah.
I forget what other launch titles, but yeah, Luigi's Mansion, notably kind of a weird but very interesting launch title for the history of Nintendo stuff.
It is, yeah. I could only see a port, though. I don't see them doing a full remaster. If they did, I would happily pay above average price for it, though.
Yeah, I mean, Luigi's Mansion 3, one of the best looking games on the console, so that would be really cool, but I also feel like maybe they would just do Luigi's Mansion 4 and then just, port the original game on its own and leave it as is and sell it for $40-$50, something like that.
Yeah.
So Mario Kart is kind of a weird case, right? Where I feel like now we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's the biggest, best Mario Kart game that's ever existed. It's got courses from almost all the courses that have ever been in any Mario Kart game ever. Most of the characters. It's like it's the definitive Mario Kart. You don't really need another one. What is the next sequel going to be? Who the frick knows? Like, how do they go from there? But in my opinion, Double Dash is the one other game in the series that really would have value from being brought to the Switch in some way, because the original game and the Game Boy Advance one don't really hold up very well, and like all those courses are on 8. 64, I'm fine. Like that's already on Nintendo Switch Online, so it's there. That's fine. Mario Kart Wii, I guess you could say the motion control is what makes that one unique, but that's already implemented in 8. Mario Kart 7 Mario Kart 8 honestly is very much the same game as Mario Kart 7. I feel like that kind of gets forgotten. We talk about 8 a lot, but like the 3DS one really introduced a lot of those mechanics, so that game doesn't really need to be brought over. So when I look at it, like Double Dash is the one to me that feels like it should be brought over in some way because it has a hugely different mechanic that changes the way that you interact with the game. So it still, to me, has value outside of those courses being brought over to 8. So I would like to see it come to the Switch. I just don't think they will, other than like a Nintendo Switch Online situation. I don't really see them caring that much about it. How do you feel about that one?
Well, they could give us Mario Kart 9, and it has the features of Double Dash stacked with everything that Mario
would
Kart
be cool.
8 has.
A Double Dash sequel?
Yeah, well, kind of yes and no, because you have the ability to play like you're playing Mario Kart 8 with that mechanic, or you can do the 2 people in a cart Double Dash. Yeah, so have that introduced in Mario Kart 9, or you keep Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and you add that as just a big form of DLC where, hey, you can now, we have added a mode, Double Dash mode on Mario Kart 8. So now you can experience that. Or we get a remastered, or we get a port. Probably a port. I don't think they'd remaster it because I think they're putting all their eggs in the basket of Mario Kart.
They're remastering those courses, which I guess that could be weird though, because if they remaster a course for 8, but then they just port the original game, even though they've already remastered some of those courses, that could be kind of a weird catch-22, and they might. I don't know if Nintendo cares about that too. I feel like they might. Suck it. You can deal with it.
I think where we're at now, they're just not concerned with bringing those old Mario Kart games to the new console. I think they're just looking at it like, hey, if you want to play them, then you can experience a little bit of it in this great new HD quality game, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But I don't know. Like I held out so long for Mario Kart 9, so freaking long, and what happened? Like here we are.
Here we are.
Booster pass.
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I mean, yeah, that game's coming to a close soon. In theory, there's only one more set of courses, and then we'll see what happens if there's any announcements following that of future Mario Kart stuff. This is not a Nintendo one, but I wanted to bring it up. Simpsons Hit and Run. Please re-release that game on modern hardware. I don't care if it's a port. Port the game with the only change of making it widescreen, and I'm happy. I just want that game on. I can play it on my GameCube, but I think they should do that. Not up to Nintendo, but that should happen. Melee. Smash Bros. Is a weird case where the only time a Smash Bros. Game has ever been re-released is Smash 64 was on the Virtual Console for the Wii. But other than that, they've never re-released, they've never remastered any of that stuff. So it's kind of a weird series where like the games exist, and there hasn't been tons of them. There's only been, 5 of them. Of course, there's part of me, Melee is my favorite game of all time. I didn't really talk about this, but like, I had a renaissance of that game later on with the competitive thing. I've talked about that so much on Geekverse, I didn't feel like I need to reiterate that today. I have zero faith that if they remade or remastered this game, that they would do it in a way that I would be happy with, or that the community would be happy with. There's no way it would be like better than what the modding scene has done for Melee. And then I think the other weird part of it is like, okay, that original game didn't have online, and I feel like if they were to re-release it and sell it, they would want to make sure that it has online in it. But then I feel like that online would probably suck because Ultimate's online is really bad too. So I don't know. It's a weird one. I'd like to see it in some way, but I also have so little faith that they would do it right that I'm kind of fine if they don't do it. But I just don't think they will. I feel like they look at this in a similar way they look at Mario Kart, and they look at Smash Ultimate and they say, hey, it has every character, it has a lot of the stages, those iconic ones, it's got all the items and all that stuff. So I don't think they look back on Smash Bros. And care about re-releasing those games. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree. I think that is shown exactly like how you said. We put all that good original stuff in the sequel because we're not going to waste our customers' time or our time going back to do something with that original title. It is what it is, and if you want to go back and play it, I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's difficult to find a GameCube. It is expensive to find Melee because it's
Melee is usually like $100 these days. I would say on average.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to play it, you can go back and you can play it. But I think Nintendo is definitely counting on more of a market being young kids playing the newer Smash Bros. Than the older generation that grew up with Melee going back to play
26
Melee.
Characters. That's nothing. Why would I want to play that crappy old game? F-Zero GX. This one has been rumored a lot for years, but it's never happened. I think this game would be, I mean, if it got a remaster and like had updated graphics, that would be sick. But I think this is one they could port, or I actually think this could be a contender for a Nintendo Switch Online situation. I would love to see this because I never actually played this game, but it looks great, and I feel like a lot of people say this is kind of the definitive F-Zero game. And I really liked F-Zero X on the N64. So I think this would be a great one for me. I would probably pick this up day one if they were to re-release it. So I'd love to see it, but I also think that they don't care too much about F-Zero because Mario Kart is a Nintendo's racing franchise, and they can focus on that, and they're happy with that. So I think this would be an easy port, though, and I think they should do it. Just to give Nintendo an idea of how much interest there is in F-Zero. And they can look at the sales of this, and if it's not great, which it probably would be, they'd be like, we don't need to make a new one. Or if for some reason it sells 5 million copies, maybe like, okay, maybe a new F-Zero game could get people interested here. So maybe hardcore racing from Nintendo as opposed to Mario Kart.
I've never played any of the F-Zero games except one on Game Boy Advance, Maximum Velocity. I used to play the daylights out of it.
Oh, I don't think I think if you went back to it, I don't think you'd have a great time. But
no, probably not. This is a very young Taylor playing this. I mean, that would have been when I was in like grade 2 or 3.
That game is also like essentially a port of the SNES version.
Really?
It has a different name, but it's pretty much just a port as far as I understand. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's my only experience. I would love to experience, though, a new F-Zero title because the last one was what, like 2000s, not even 2010 era?
Oh, man. Yeah, GX, there might have been one on the DS or something like that. There's never a new one on the Wii, I don't think. So it's been a long time. It has been one of the dormant Nintendo franchises for sure.
Which is weird. I feel like they should give Captain Falcon some attention. I mean, he's his only games of the modern age are Smash Bros.
Drop him in Mario Kart 8, and I'm happy. Put him in there. You already got some courses from him. I forget I think the Blue Falcon, like his vehicle's in there. Just put him in there, and I'm fine with that. But I think a port of this would be cool. Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. I feel like they should port that. I don't think you need to change much. Make it widescreen. Good to go. I think they should definitely port that. I think it would sell pretty well.
Yeah.
Wind Waker, you held that one up. This has been another one that's talked about, rumored a lot. I think a reason for that is because they did a remaster of it on the Wii U, and so it seems like, well, why don't they port that to the Switch? And in my mind, they can do that whenever they want, and they're just waiting for the right time. They're waiting for a lull in new Zelda releases, and they're just going to drop it at that point. Or maybe this is like a good early Switch 2 release, backwards compatible. It'll probably work on the original Switch as well. I think they're just going to wait for a rainy day, but they haven't had that recently. They've had pretty steady Zelda releases. So I think that's coming, and I think they're going to sell it, and it'll be the same version as the Wii U one, and people are going to love it. But I think they're just not in a hurry to get it out the door, in my opinion.
So there is a strong history then of Zelda games getting the remaster, right? Because Twilight Princess HD exists, Skyward Sword had it,
Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask 3D.
Yeah, exactly. So this is definitely
Link's Awakening
something...
got the Switch remake treatment.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I could easily see them bringing some, like you said, at the right time, bringing these over and just throwing them on the Switch. You might as well. I mean, if you're sitting on like an HD Twilight Princess, that's a highly sought after game. I still have mine for GameCube.
Yeah.
And it's a treasure. So port it over.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about Twilight Princess too. You think that's probably in the same wheelhouse? I feel like if they're gonna, because of course that's a weird one where it was like the Wii, it released on Wii and GameCube at the same time, I believe, or it's all on both consoles, like with different versions. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think they're gonna do both of them. Wind Waker maybe is a bit higher priority, but I think they're both pretty low priority, and just like, once again, rainy day, not many Zelda things releasing in a year or two space. Drop one of those and you're good to go.
Hold on one sec.
Sure. Going through this list, I think Animal Crossing is another one that I was just talking about Animal Crossing here. To me, that's another one that's like Smash Ultimate or Mario Kart. I don't think they care to re-release the older ones. I think they're happy to be like, hey, New Horizons exists. Go play that. It's the biggest, best one in the series. But yeah, what was your Zelda thought here?
I was just going to say I would love it if because they ported Ocarina of Time on the GameCube, and they have like the Master Quest. I would love
I don't think I knew about that. This is news to me. That is very interesting.
You haven't known this? Okay. It's fantastic. So again, Ocarina of Time, my first experience was on the GameCube because I got this. So I would love it if they did this.
Is there a visual upgrade at all, or is it just like can you count the polygons? It looks more or less the same from those images.
I'd say it's pretty.
What is Master Quest though?
Master Quest. It says it on here. I never got into the Master Quest. I just did the original, but this continues to never before released Master Quest, a second journey through Ocarina of Time with newly laid out and incredible challenging dungeons.
Oh my god! Wow, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, there you go.
Huh? I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm writing that down. I want to go look into Master Quest. I feel like maybe I have heard of that, but I never really thought about what it actually meant. So that's very interesting. Okay, so tell me about Pokemon. So you mentioned Colosseum there. I don't know if you have any experience with other Pokemon games. I think there's like 4 or 5 that were on the GameCube. Do you think we'll see any? Do you think we'll ever see them go back to those games, re-release those in any way? And if so, at least for Colosseum is one closest to your heart. Do you think that would be a good port candidate or remake, remaster candidate? How do you feel about that stuff?
I did feel like Colosseum was a little short in terms of its storyline, and once you beat the storyline, you really don't have much to do, and you rely heavily on the multiplayer aspect, but GameCube's multiplayer aspect was very limited because you needed to be directly there. So if they have it set up where it's connected to Pokemon Bank, it's connected to the online Pokemon battling scene, totally, I think this game has a lot of potential. So I think that could do well. I don't know if you would port it, though. I think you would just remake it at that point. But you'd have to really have a large emphasis on the multiplayer. Gale of Darkness, I never played that one. So I can't really comment on it. But I know that was the other like big main one at the time.
They mostly did like spin-offs on the GameCube, I guess, rather than like they didn't ever have like a X and Y or Red and Blue. They didn't have one of those new mainline game releases on the GameCube, as far as I know, right? It was more like that stuff's on the Game Boy Advance, and then the DS, and the GameCube is the space for weird spin-off stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Pokemon has had an interesting presence on Nintendo Switch Online. It's been minimal, but it's been there. On 64, they have Pokemon Snap and Stadium now. We know they're bringing the trading card game to the Game Boy one. I don't think that's happened yet. So there's a little bit of presence there. So maybe there's some potential of Nintendo Switch Online reviving some of that stuff. The sports games, right? There's Strikers. There was Superstar Baseball, the first baseball game. There was Mario Golf. There's a Mario Tennis game. So of those, I mean, baseball's the only one that hasn't seen a new iteration on the Switch. For those other ones, I don't think they would really care to re-release them, with the exception of a Nintendo Switch Online. I think is the place to release those games again if they want to do it. But I guess baseball's the one we could look at. Those like, okay, this hasn't had a new release, so do they release this to have a baseball game on the Switch? But I don't know if the odds are high that they would make a new one. That's the one weird one I'm feeling about. I felt like golf, tennis, strikers were guaranteed at some point on the Switch they were going to happen. I don't feel that way for baseball for some reason. But maybe with the Switch 2, they're running out of sports to do for Mario. Like maybe the place to go is to make a new baseball game. How do you feel about that?
I enjoy the baseball ones that pop up on the streams we do. But I do feel like it is very slow paced, whereas the other ones are a little bit faster. Even the golf to me feels a little bit faster. Like the tennis, tennis makes sense. I think it's like one of the first Mario sports games. At least I was playing that on Game Boy Pocket.
Well, with the exception of maybe like Golf, NES Golf, which had Mario in it, but it wasn't like a Mario Golf game. I think you're right with tennis being early on there for sure.
That was a long time ago I played it, but
in 64.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's so many other sports. Like do we have Mario at the Olympics on Switch? Because I could see that coming out before we ever get a
there was a new
Mario game.
There was a new one released.
Okay.
And then I think the first one of that series was on the Wii, I guess. The new ones. Mario Party as well. So this is kind of a weird case where we had Mario Party Superstars, which had a lot of stuff from the GameCube games on it. It had some of the mini games. I feel like it probably had one or two of the maps, right? I don't think they would ever remaster or remake a Mario Party game. I think that's kind of the extent we have seen from those games, with the exception of, once again, Nintendo Switch Online, good candidate there. Kind of agree with me on that one.
I agree. I think just give us DLC. Honestly, that's all we need for this game.
Yeah, feels a bit too late at this point, but also like Mario Kart years later got DLC, so it's possible. Star Fox Adventures is the kind of 3D or third-person action adventure-y sort of Star Fox game, which I remember also seeing my cousin's house and thinking it was a weird, interesting game that I wanted to play, but never rented, never did play. And then Star Fox Assault, I've just played through you and whatnot, as we've done it in Gauntlet. So you're an Assault guy. That was your OG game. How do you feel about these two Star Fox games in terms of likelihood of coming back? Do you think they should remake, remaster?
I think we're due for. We need something Star Fox now at this point in time. And Adventures was the game my cousin got into. Like we both played Assault a lot, but he went further and played the Daylights at Adventures. Loves that title. And for me, I never got into it. I only got Assault. So if they do redo them, I'd probably give them preference to remaster Adventures. I think that'll hit home way more. And then Assault, they could just port. Back in the day, Assault's controls felt really, really good, but playing them now, I just want to claw a chalkboard because it's so painful.
Yeah. No, I think Adventures would be cool just because it's the only Star Fox game of that sort. And so it kind of exists as this weird test that obviously was probably to them a failure if they never did it again. But I would love to see that. And if the price was right, I would definitely pick it up and try it out.
You could play as Crystal and other characters in that, couldn't you?
Yeah, I remember Crystal being, because I think that was maybe her first time appearing in a game.
I think it was.
And so I don't know what the other playable characters were. I guess Fox Falco. I don't know, Peppy, Slippy. I assume maybe Wolf was playable too. I'm not really sure. Yeah, that's a weird game. I would like to check it out at some point. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, I think they should definitely do. I could see a port being fine. A remaster would be cool as well. But obviously Fire Emblem's huge now, and it was not huge on the GameCube, and so I think it would be a good time to re-release it. Sell it, they could make a good profit. A lot of people would want to go back and check it out because Three Houses was the biggest one in the series. There's a lot more Fire Emblem fans nowadays, so that would be a good one to re-release. I wanted to bring up Battalion Wars. Do you know anything about Battalion Wars?
I do not know anything about this.
So yeah, there's the Advance Wars is the biggest game in this series, But essentially what they had done was like, there was Game Boy Wars, there was Famicom Wars, and then there was Advance Wars. So it was just like that series of tactics games. They would just like name it after the console that it was on. But then with Advance Wars is when they stopped doing that. They did Advance Wars, but then on the DS, they just did a sequel to Advance Wars. So rather than DS Wars, it was just called Advance Wars 2, like Wings of Destruction or some stupid shit like that. And then for some reason on the GameCube, when they did like the next iteration of the series, instead of calling it GameCube Wars, they called it Battalion Wars. And I think part of that was because it was quite a bit different. It wasn't that turn-based tactics anymore. It was like a third-person action-adventure sort of strategy sort of game. So I wanted to bring it up because it's a weird point in the series because I think Advance Wars has been the biggest, and obviously that did just get the remaster treatment on the Switch with that 1+2 Reboot Camp release. So I'd be curious to see this one come back because I don't really know anything about it. I've never heard anyone talk about it before, but it's a curiosity for me. So I'd like to see what this game is all about. So I wanted to shout that out. The Donkey Konga games, Jungle Beat, I think there was a bunch of these on the GameCube. Obviously, with the peripheral needed, I don't really see them ever re-releasing this or making a new peripheral to get with this. I think that's fine. I think it's okay if these existed as a weird anomaly of Donkey Kong games that exist only on the GameCube and will forever just only be there.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I feel like Kirby Air Ride was also a pretty interesting Kirby release because it was one of the few that was very different from the gameplay style of the other ones in the series. This one to me is like ripe for the picking for Nintendo Switch Online. If they do that, this would be a prime game to put on there. It's a cool game. People have a lot of love for it. It's weird and different. Kirby games are all over Nintendo Switch Online already. So yeah, I think this would be a good release there. And then I was looking up this. This is something I didn't really know about. But the Wario had a couple games on the GameCube. He had WarioWare Inc., Mega Party games. That was just a new WarioWare game, which is cool, and I think that could come to the Switch. But then there's also this game called Wario World. Have you ever heard of Wario World?
I got it on the shelf, yeah.
You have it on the shelf? Okay, please tell me about Wario World. I did not know this existed until like yesterday when I was doing some Googling.
I'll go grab it in a second. But
Can we please play this on a 24-hour stream and just boot it up?
I'll grab the case.
Yeah, grab the case. To me, I think this looks like a platformer, 3D platformer kind of game. So is this a 3D platformer or am I wrong about that?
No, it is. It is.
Okay.
That
box art is so fucking good. I love that box art.
It is platformer. The controls are definitely like a little interesting. I don't know how well you
It looks very simplistic, I would say.
It is. Like it's just, if I remember correctly, it's a bunch of it's just going into dimensions and you fight different bosses, but it reminds me of a lesser version of like Mario Sunshine or Luigi's Mansion, but it fits in there because it's an open, like a 3D platformer. So yeah. I got Sunshine. I love Sunshine. I got Luigi's Mansion. Love Luigi's Mansion. I thought, okay, like what else is there? And when I looked around, I saw, okay, well, Wario has his own very similar game where you're running around in different worlds, going to different dimensions and stuff. So
yeah,
it's a really fun game. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Nice.
So there you go.
I'm excited to jump into that one because, man, I love it. You just like Batten Kaitos, Wario World, like you're out here playing some of these kind of low key GameCube games. It was a good pocket for you. Okay, so we talked about Nintendo Switch Online a bit here, but as we talked through all those games, I feel like a lot of them make sense for that remaster or port treatment and re-release them and sell them like on the eShop. But then I also do feel like as we go through that, like there is quite a few of those games that I think actually would work as a Nintendo Switch Online sort of situation. And I feel like they could get away with releasing games still on the shop and on Nintendo Switch Online, and some of those being free as part of that service, some of them being like purchasable games. I think they could get away with it for the GameCube. And so, yeah, my thoughts for the Nintendo Switch Online release games would be like any of those Mario Sports games, I think would be great. Mario Party, any of those ones would be good. Kirby Air Ride, I think would be perfect for that service. And then we didn't mention this Zelda game, but there was also Zelda Four Swords Adventure, which was like a co-op-y game, which is more of a top-down Zelda situation. There was also like a Game Boy Advance version, so I think this is one of those situations where they had like Game Boy Advance and a GameCube version. I don't think this one would necessarily be one where they do like an HD remaster and re-release it for purchase, but I think it would be perfect for Switch Online, and it's kind of like a co-op-y game. So I think that would be a really good one to put on there, because then you can advertise that there's a Zelda game on the GameCube Nintendo Switch Online service. I think WarioWare, maybe not World. I think World could be a good one actually as well, but I think WarioWare would be a good contender. Something Pokemon, whether it's Coliseum, whether it's Gale of Darkness, whether it's one of these other weird ones. And then I actually think this would be a perfect spot for Mario Sunshine to see the light of day, pun intended there, again on the Switch. Similarly, right, they did that for Super Mario 64, where 3D All-Stars came out. That was part of that collection. And then they put Mario 64 on Nintendo Switch Online when the N64 came out. And so I think they could do the same thing for Sunshine here. And that way they like got their money from selling it for a bit. It's unavailable now, and now they can put it on Switch Online. So when you look at that, that's a roster of potentially, 4 sports games, 4 party games. Mario Kart, will say. Zelda 4 Swords, Kirby Air Ride. So we're at like 12, 13, 14 sort of games. And if they have an initial roster of 4, 5, 6 games and then get it up to 14 over a couple of years, it's not amazing. I'd love to see a lot more games, but I think that's a pretty decent roster, and that would be a good selling point, and people would want to buy in to get access to a lot of those games. So I think it could work. I was skeptical when me and Travis had that conversation before, but the more I thought about it, I feel like that actually could be a good way to go. And I think with the Switch 2 release, which is, big rumors right now for that, I think that would be a great, with Switch 2 release, here's the GameCube Online, Nintendo Switch Online thing as a new feature. I think that would be a really, really good combination there. So I could see it happening. I've talked myself into it at this point.
I agree. That would be a really dang good opening, like a poll attraction, particularly for me if they announce some of those titles you mentioned, and this is coming out on the Switch 2.
Yeah.
Day one launch, you get access to GameCube Virtual Console or whatever, and that's a really, really banger idea. Oh my goodness.
Was there any games that I didn't mention that you think would be good candidates for Switch Online? Obviously, we'd love if like all of them were, and we didn't have to individually pay for all of these. But I was trying to be realistic with that list, and I think it is fairly realistic. So any other ones that we didn't mention that you feel like would be good contenders for the Nintendo Switch Online treatment rather than a solo re-release?
There's a game called iNinja, which was a heckin' good time back in the day.
iNinja.
My cousin played it and loved it so much. He bought it for me, and so I played it. It was
3D platformer.
There was just so much fun.
This game
with
looks
the
cute.
moveset. Yeah, such a good time. I would also say Shadow the Hedgehog. I originally played that on Xbox with my friend, and it was so cool. And I ended up getting it on GameCube. I found it at Value Village a few months ago and picked it up just to have.
I Googled that, and one of the top images is just like Shadow, but he's pregnant, and it's like, what is going on here?
That's definitely not in the
That's
game.
not from the game. I'm just saying it's like some weird fan art going on here with people doing their weird stuff. Yeah, no, that's actually a good thing to bring up, like a Sonic situation, because there were other Sonic games on the GameCube. Of course, there's Adventure Battle, whatever that game is that we've played on the Gauntlet before. But yeah, I mean, because that's the other thing is like at this point, the reason we're talking about GameCube as being the next Nintendo Switch Online edition is because like they did NES, they did SNES, the Game Boy, they own Game Boy Advance. So it's like that kind of makes sense. That's the only place they'd go next, right? Like, they're not going to do DS because that's too weird with the double screens. The Wii, they could do, but like they would obviously do the GameCube first if they're going to make their way to the Wii. And like 3DS also doesn't make sense because of the double screens, and that is still fairly modern. The Wii U, all the good games from the Wii U have already kind of been ported. So the GameCube is the last remaining one that makes sense, with the exception of the other console they did was the Sega Genesis, right? And so they could do another Sega thing. They could do the Sega Saturn or the Dreamcast. But I feel like that would not be a good thing to time with Switch 2. I think that would be a weird thing of like, oh, okay, here's Switch 2 is here, Nintendo Switch Online, here's the new update. Sega Saturn, and people are like, what the fuck is that? Like, like I think they could do it eventually, and maybe even now, like before the Switch 2 comes out, that could be the next one, and then GameCube, and then maybe the Dreamcast afterwards or something, if Sega wants to keep that partnership going of the Nintendo Switch Online connection there. And I would personally like that. I think the Dreamcast is a console, even in Saturn as well. I was not a Sega kid growing up. I did not even have friends that really had them. Huge blind spot for me in my gaming history. And for some reason, I feel like a lot of people have been talking about the Dreamcast lately. I don't know why. So I know very little about it, but people are just talking about this console and some of the great games. And some of them sound really interesting to me now. So I would like to check them out. And there's not really an easy way to play them. So yeah, I think that could be cool. But I think GameCube is obviously a bigger pop and it's more Nintendo focused. That does make more sense as the next potential Nintendo Switch Online edition.
I think you got to sandwich it in for sure because you said it. People are going to be shocked if that's what they drop on a new console.
I don't even know. Like, what is a relevant Sega Saturn game? I could not name a single one for you. Like, I'm sure there's Sonic the Hedgehog 6 or something weird. I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about the Saturn. That was a weird console. That you more hear about the Genesis and the Dreamcast than you do the Sega Saturn. So, Taylor, any other GameCube thoughts here? We've had a very fun, I'd say very thorough discussion on this console, and I'm curious to play more of these games and talk about them in the future. And I would love to borrow Wind Waker from you, by the way, if you're so willing, because that's one of my biggest Zelda blind spots, I would say. But yeah. Any other GameCube thoughts here today?
Well, you mentioned the talk about the Sega and everything like that. It just kind of reminded me. Now, is there anything Mega Man on GameCube? I don't know. I played on Game Boy, but
there is, yeah. So once again, when I was making my list, I was more like looking at Nintendo IP. But there's definitely like a few of them. Like there's a Mega Man X collection. So I think there's like collections of 2D games, anniversary collections. So I don't know if there was like a 3D action adventure or like platformer sort of game. Maybe there is. When I'm Googling it, I'm not seeing anything like that right off the bat here. So yeah, I did not really play. I think one of my friends brought over a Mega Man game once and we like played it for a bit, but I think it was more of like a collection of older games rather than like a new cool 3D Mega Man game. But yeah, definitely there is quite a few of those that existed in that era too. Like even the Game Boy Advance had the Battle Network games and there was like 6 of those or something. So it was a huge era for Mega Man. Tons of releases in that early 2000s pocket.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I got nothing else then.
Well, that was great. That was a really fun kind of nostalgic discussion on the GameCube. We got to do more of this often. I feel like that's something I would like Sidequest to be, is like we're not tied to what is new and happening in the world. Like we can just go back and have these nostalgic discussions. And yeah, I don't know why. It was time for the GameCube. I was just feeling nostalgic in this last week or two here. So very fun to have the discussion. I'm very excited for the 24-hour stream to bust out some of these GameCube games. Taylor, thank you for joining me. We'll be back next week, of course, from some SideQuest goodness. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye.